It is my distinct privilege and honor to introduce my colleague who has led truth and shined light on how to save lives. This is a man of humility, of distinction, of intelligence, of integrity that many of you know, and if you don't, the world. He has probably saved more lives because of his willingness to speak out than anybody I know, and that is our beloved friend and colleague, Dr. Peter McCullough. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is a scientific reawakening. This country has been wrecked by a virus that's been here for 2 years. And the doctors who stand in front of you early on in the pandemic used all their clinical skills and knowledge and compassionately treated each and every high-risk patient to the best of their ability to prevent 2 bad outcomes: hospitalization and death. And they have demonstrated through the totality of their work, both clinical, research, and from an ecologic perspective, they have demonstrated that the vast majority of hospitalizations and deaths that occurred in this country could have been prevented. What was the shortcoming? What was the shortcoming? The shortcoming is we never had a full-throated endorsement from our government agencies, the CDC, the NIH, and the FDA, nor the White House Task Force. Not once did we hear a full-throated endorsement for doctors and healthcare providers. We have 1 million doctors in the United States. We have 500,000 nurse practitioners and physician assistants. Not once did we hear an endorsement for our best and compassionate care to each and every American. In fact, we heard the opposite. Through a series of statements, a series of actions, there was effectively a chill put on early treatment. Those efforts that were being put forward by the best doctors in America, those efforts were impeded. And it effectively amplified fear, suffering, hospitalization, and death. And it affected the most vulnerable people in our society, our seniors, our people of color in this country. They were adversely affected in the most severe and in some cases the most final way. I can tell you, as we sit here today, there are 227,000 papers in the peer-reviewed literature in the National Library of Medicine cited in PubMed. Of those, 94,000 involve the outcomes of hospitalization and death. Of the totality of papers, there are only 1,400 papers, and I know because I've published them with this group on this stage in front of you, many of them, that outline a pathway to treating patients in order to prevent hospitalization and death. And by treatment, we reduce the intensity and severity and duration of symptoms, and by that mechanism, we reduce the probability of hospitalization and death. We have only heard a two-pronged strategy. One is to stay in lockdown, wear masks, social distancing, and wait for a vaccine. That's what we've heard the entire time. Now, there's not a single person here that is against the broad use of vaccines as we use them in our clinical practice, myself included. But when the vaccines were in development, we knew it was a gamble. I published that it was a gamble. It was a gamble of a lifetime, if not a gamble of all time for humanity. And what you're going to hear today is you're going to hear the careful vetting of the risks and the benefits and the totality of what we are looking at today. And I want to finish with a final thought, and that is we have 3 critical circles that all of you are in today. We have a circle of medical freedom. You have the freedom, you and you alone have the autonomy over your body. You have the freedom to determine what happens to your body. That is your sole possession. In many ways, it's the only thing you really have. That is your possession. That circle of medical freedom is inextricably linked to a circle of social freedom. And that social freedom includes your family and your employment and your faith, and involves your overall citizenry in any country that you reside, in any state that you reside. And that is inextricably linked to the circle of economic freedom. Medical freedom is linked to social and economic freedom. If we allow the circle of medical freedom to even be touched, let alone be broken, all the circles fracture. They all do, and it crumbles. The writing is on the wall, and the determination to preserve medical freedom is in your hands. It's in your personal hands. It can't be any more clear. This moment cannot be more decisive. So join me and join these heroic doctors and nurses and others in helping bring America home. Thank you.